Hello, my name is Otoma Edje. Welcome to the second season of Image Bearers. This is the 23rd episode of the season. I'm so excited today to be interviewing Joel Nagel, who is the evangelist of the Lansing Area Church of Christ here in Michigan. He's doing an incredible job, and I think this is a great opportunity for us to just learn from what he's doing as he's continued to, learn himself, that we can implement in our churches. And I'm also very excited to have with me one of my best friends, Araujo, who I grew up with together spiritually in Africa many years ago. And he leads a church in Paraguay. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So Araujo, you want to kick us off?
Yes, thank you so much. Basically, the first question that I have for you, Joel, is just can you tell us how God brought you into the kingdom of God?
Well, thanks so much for having me, Otoma. I've looked up to you for such a long time, and this is such a cool thing. So thanks for thinking of us up here in Lansing. We were just talking before, I think all of us were baptized the same year in '94. But how that happened for me is I grew up, my parents went to the traditional Church of Christ. My dad was actually involved in the Crossroads ministry at Ohio State in the 70s, but then there was no, group of churches after you got out of college from a Crossroads ministry. So they went to the traditional Church of Christ. And then I think my dad went to the second service that the Detroit church had when it got planted. He was kind of waiting for a discipling movement church to get planted. So he went alone, and then he loved it and brought the rest of our family, so my sister and my mom, and I still remember that service was in a hotel room, and there was clapping, and it was coming from a traditional Church of Christ. It was really something. But I remember like looking at my parents and looking, they were trying to clap, so that's '89. And I think one of the things that was awesome is I could see my parents. So we had been, definitely a religious family, and we went to church, a couple different churches of Christ. But when they went to the Detroit Church of Christ, they studied the Bible, got baptized, and I could really see a transformation and humility in my parents. And for me, that was really powerful, like as a preteen, to see your parents change. And I think about that a lot with when people with kids come into the kingdom, just to get that opportunity to see their parents change, no matter what they've been doing before, how little they've gone to church. It's really a powerful thing. And then I think about that for myself, raising my kids. I've got a 13-year-old and an 8-year-old, both daughters. They probably won't get to see a huge wholesale change in my life, because we've been doing this since my parents had their big change. But finding ways to be humble, I think, is really important, so that kids can see that God is real and really can change people's lives, even their parents' lives. So, but in '94, when I was 14, I started studying the Bible and got baptized in Rodney Fuller's basement in Detroit, and I was one of the first teens in the teen ministry, it was an awesome church to grow up in. Feel super grateful for that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I know that you've been, I think, in Lansing since 1989, and I think it's been just inspiring to see the church consistently grow year after year. So my question to you is, what are some of the things that you've learned over the years that you can share with us and our audience that can also help us to grow our churches?
Yeah, so I've been there since '98, so when I was there, I was just as a student at Michigan State. It was a really small ministry, and then when I graduated, it was probably around 30 members, and it really stayed stuck. This is 2002. From 2002 to 2009, it stayed in the 30s. We would grow, baptize a couple people would leave, move in, move out, and we were just stuck. And it was actually really frustrating because we just really couldn't figure it out, or if there even wasn't it to figure out. Why can't this church grow? And then around 2009, the church really started to grow consistently and at points dynamically. Like we doubled in 2 years, and then quadrupled from there. So now we're like 125, and it's grown every year. I don't think it's going to grow this year with everything going on, but everybody has a rough year every once in a while. But we had 10 years in a row of growth, which was so much better than the 10 years before that of not growth. Kind of like Joseph with Pharaoh. We had those famine years, and then the feast years came opposite order, I guess. But I think some of the things that made a difference for us was one of the mottos we have is high faith and high expectations. And so you have to have both. So we want to have high expectations. Like for a while there, it was, people's attendance was hit or miss. Giving, do we really expect that we're going to bring people to church with us, or is it just going to be the members at church? Is everybody going to be involved in Bible studies, or will it just be the staff or a few people that are involved in Bible studies? And so we really decided that we needed, and it couldn't just be me, but we needed to have high expectations for each other. But then coupled with that, because if you just have high expectations, it starts to feel like, like the military. You gotta measure up. You're not doing enough, and people get burnt out. So with that, you also have to have high faith. And so we started to really dream about evangelizing Lansing, and we had this idea that if we could just reach 1% of Lansing, that'd be like 5,000, a church of 5,000. That's our ultimate goal. I don't know how God's going to do it, but that's still our goal. And we just thought, man, if 1 out of 100 people were disciples of Jesus, how much would that change the Lansing area? Like, I think statistically, there'd be a difference in our area if just 1 out of 100 people was totally in love with Jesus. So that's, those things working together. And then I think also just especially for different situations, every church is different. And so I really try to identify bottlenecks, like areas where this thing is slowing down our growth. How can we do something different? How can we have a different approach or be creative to open up this bottleneck so it won't slow us down? And one of the big ones early on was just our Bible studies. We would have Bible studies. We would teach people how to study the Bible with their friends, but we turned it into a workbook, which helped in a lot of ways. It made the quality of the Bible studies better because people had that. They could, and then the other thing is that if you fill out a workbook as you're going through the Bible studies, when someone gets baptized, they've got all the answers. They can turn around a lot more quickly. And I think most people are like at their most fired up point right after they get baptized, but they're also at the least knowledgeable point. And so having the workbook filled out kind of bridged that gap a little bit so people could be fruitful more quickly.
Do you have an example of that workbook with you by any chance?
Yeah, I do. I've got a couple of them. It's been through a bunch of different editions, and it always is getting tweaked. I'm working on one online right now called gowithgod.org, and I think it's going to be really good. It'll have a companion field guide with it, but these are some of the books we've used. This one is like kind of the 9 Bible studies, but with all the questions that I would ask if I was studying the Bible with somebody. And so we give that to somebody, they fill out ahead of time. And then so when someone wants to do a Bible study, they just have a conversation about the study that was done. Anybody can do that and be more effective. And then this one, old school, is just 5 studies, and it's for people who are more mature as Christians, who don't need kind of the training wheels, but can take a study and make it personal. That's, I think, one of the greatest things about our churches is that these Bible studies are personal, but that takes some skill. And so this is for people who are able to personalize those Bible studies, and then people can move a little quicker. We've noticed that with married couples, we have a lot of married families in our church. It just takes a long time to get through the Bible studies. If there's 9 studies and kids get sick or there's stuff going on in people in either family's life. It can take forever. And so if we condense that a little bit, it makes it more possible for someone to get baptized or to become a member sooner. So
Wow.
That's awesome.
So those are some of the things we've done. Definitely like to do a lot of creative things and think outside the box, but not throw the box away. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Amen. Great. I have another question for you. It will be, how is the church doing in the age of COVID-19? Have you made any changes to keep members strong? If so, what are some of the changes that you guys have made?
Yeah, that's like the $1 million question right there. What do we do, especially since it seems to change every week, and it's been a little rough, even for myself. A couple months ago, for a few weeks, I was like, I don't know if I can do this anymore, and even talking to my wife, she was like, yeah, I don't know if you can do this anymore, and that's never good for an evangelist when both of you start thinking, I don't know. But I definitely feel like I'm in a better place, and each week getting more and more, I think, seeing this as an opportunity more than as a burden. But I think it's definitely affected the church. I think that when I look at some of the people who've really struggled, the 1 Corinthians 15:33 comes to mind. I think this is a common thread, is bad company corrupts good character. And so people who weren't really tied in to good company, or who had a lot of worldly influences and relationships in their life, they seem to be the people who are struggling the most. So the biggest thing we're doing for the fall, COVID kind of hit as a surprise and we were scrambling, but we want to move into the fall, not knowing what COVID will look like, but knowing what the weather in Michigan will be like. So the outdoor services we're having now won't really be a possibility. Maybe we'll be able to meet inside, we don't know. But we do know that we need to have really solid groups in discipleship. And so we've been making phone calls and trying to set up leadership training so that we can have the best groups possible, so that good company can produce good character instead of bad company causing bad character. So I've seen recently Bible studies are starting to pick up, which is really encouraging, that people are just sharing their faith. I think people are really open right now and looking for God, but there might be less messengers than ever before because of the difficulty. So hopefully we can figure out how to change that.
That's awesome. I think it's definitely a challenge. I know we're working through things right now in Detroit, and I think a lot of churches are doing the same thing, trying to figure out the best way to evangelize and be family. And the whole issue with the church is togetherness. And when everyone is, quote, disfellowshipped and can't meet together,
I don't like that word. I don't like it.
Oh my gosh, how can we really live out and be the body? I think it is very challenging and requires definitely that creativity to try to figure things out to keep everyone strong. Yeah. So one of the things I know that you've done is you've written a number of books. I know you've written a bunch of pamphlets, which I think are very helpful as far as direction, but you've also written at least a couple books. Yep. Can you share a little bit about the books you've written and also the writing process as far as research and then writing, like how long it takes to write a book, and then the editing? So it's kind of a lot, but if you could maybe address some of those items.
Yeah, sure. I can try to take you through. I just feel super blessed that that I'm able to write and kind of have ideas that are good enough that they could help other churches. And so, I have a lot of ideas. I read a lot, and every once in a while, one of those ideas is good and is able to help other places. So I think that's what happens. I don't necessarily aspire to be an author, but if a resource helped us in Lansing, then I want it to be able to help other people too. And IPI has been a great partner to help that happen. And the books have done really well. I think because they're practical books. They help church leaders to do things, to be more effective, and to do them, and to do the things that we love, like giving special missions. My first book was Passport to the Land of Enough. There it is.
Oh, awesome.
This has 3 editions: the European Mission Society, and then the African Mission Society, and I think they're working on an Indian edition, possibly at some point. The whole purpose of the book is kind of to take first world Christians on a tour of what it would be like to be a Christian in the third world. And so I'm not really the most well-traveled person, but every year we give special missions. And as a church leader, I was like, oh, we're giving special missions. And it can feel like, we're just asking people for money. And I wanted it to be more of an experience for people. And so the contacts I had in Africa, India, I did a survey to get information about South America. And then I remember at a meeting, a brother from Africa got up and said, I read that Passport to the Land of Enough book, and I read the part about Africa, and talk about being nervous. I was like, what is he going to say about this? And he said, it is exactly what it's like to be a rich Christian in Africa, which is what, instead of highlighting poverty in Africa, we highlighted what it means to be, what wealthy Christians' lives are like in Africa. They're bringing people into their homes all the time, showing hospitality. And so I had a friend, a brother from the Ivory Coast, who came and was at Michigan State for a couple of years, and we built a great relationship. So I wrote about him. So there's, in the research of the book, there's like the personal relationships. I read a lot. I read even just studies about poverty worldwide. A really good book from Princeton about what it means to, live on $2 a day. And then for my other book, How to Be a Missionary in Your Hometown, that was just kind of we've done these creative campaigns, and that was kind of putting a lot of those things together into a 12-week evangelistic program, campaign, whatever you want to call it, for the church. And some churches have done that, and it's been really helpful for those churches. And the Passport to the Land of Enough, those editions have raised hundreds of thousands of dollars, like the year before, and then the year that they used the book. And so I'm so thrilled that this book could help so many churches in the third world, and definitely have a huge heart for helping Christians all over the world. So I just feel grateful. So I don't know if I answered all of your questions, but
yeah, I think with that, no, I appreciate that, and it was kind of quite a bit I kind of threw at you at once. So I guess the other part would be the writing process. So once you've got everything together from your research, whether it's surveys or personal stories and so forth, how long does it take you to normally write? Do you just crank it out in a certain amount of time? Do you kind of split it up? And then what's the editorial process?
Yeah, that's a good question. So everything I've done so far has been things that I've done for the church. So when I think about my sermons or lessons for midweek or devotionals, I try to think, if this could be something that would help other churches, then all I need to do is kind of tweak what I've already written. And so when I've tried a couple times to write other things, like I think I have a pretty good Revelation series that I'd love to have be a book. But if I can't do it with what I'm doing for the church, it's really hard to find the time. So that's kind of the process. I'm just taking things and making them bigger or more widely distributed. And then IPI really works with the editing and all of that stuff. So.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So in reference to just the racial and culture issues right now that are going on in our churches with the murder of George Floyd. So just a quick question, how are you doing with that? And then how is the church doing? And what are some of the things you've done to kind of help work through those issues to bring the church, I guess, back centered to Christ and, those kinds of things?
Yeah. I love you saying it's a quick question. That's a big question. It's been heartbreaking on so many levels, and I feel heavy-hearted about it. And so what we did right away is we just asked the church to listen and learn. Like James says, be slow to speak, quick to listen, slow to become angry. And then personally, I've just tried to be a better learner and listener as well, and really be open-minded. When Ahmaud Arbery was killed, I did the run with Maud. I've been running a lot. I really love running. And so I really identified and felt for him. And it was heartbreaking. I did this run. It was like 2.38 miles. And I had never, ever worried about my life on a run before. I never gave it a thought. And to think about that, I didn't have headphones on. I just tried to think about him and his life experience the whole time. It was, I've intellectually, I think I've understood that things are different for me because of the color of my skin, but that was the first time that I really, really felt it in a greater way. And so that's just some of and I'm reading books and reading books that have been suggested by people of color in our church and learning in that way. I think, for me personally too, I just feel so blessed to have grown up in the Detroit Church of Christ. I have a great family that was in the church, but I feel like I also got raised by the Detroit church. Mark Hamilton was my first discipler and teen leader. Brian Perkins led the teens. Clifton, Damian, I've known you forever, Otoma. Like these guys are like big brothers and fathers to me. And I feel like I had like these great, strong Black men in my life. And it was awesome. Like it was such a good example to see these guys who loved God. And I think that helped me to really value diversity in the kingdom. And it's frustrating for me because I feel like in Lansing, it's difficult to have a diverse church. We've tried things and it's, just straight up honest. It's very hard to have a diverse church to make people feel included. So in response to things, we're putting together a group so that we can respond to whatever's happening in the world, so that there can be more of a voice, so that we can be more welcoming, and really give that group a lot of autonomy to say, hey, this is what the response needs to be. This is what it looks like to be compassionate or empathetic, and so I'm really committed to that, and praying and hoping that it will help us to grow more diverse as a church.
Yeah, I will say, I know Araujo has a couple questions. I'm going through right now. I just finished Escaping the Beast by Mike Burns and Crossing the Line. Both really good books. And one of the things he emphasizes a lot is just the kingdom of God, what it's supposed to look like. So I think we're all trying to navigate and figure out the best way to make sure that the church represents what it's supposed to as far as all nations, but that we navigate that very carefully with our churches, that it doesn't end up dividing the church, but actually uniting and bringing the church closer to Christ. So it's a tough one. Yeah.
Amen. I think, real unity is hard fought, and it comes from really knowing and listening to people. And I just don't think we're there yet. But it's something that we want to be, because I think that's what the kingdom is.
Mm-hmm. Before Araujo has his couple of questions, I do have one for you. This is an additional one. I know you mentioned running, and I think you have posted quite a few times, I think, on Facebook about going on prayer walks and these kinds of things. Can you share a little bit about your morning routine as far as your prayer life, your Bible study, these kinds of things?
Yeah, well, it's not necessarily a morning routine. As a minister, I've got a pretty flexible schedule, so a lot of times it's more of an afternoon thing. But yeah, I spend a lot of time in the woods. And this is the map behind me. This is right next to our house. It's why we moved to where we live now. I would drive to this county park, and it's got all these trails, and it goes along the Grand River, and that's where I would just love to pray. I'd drive down here a couple times a week and have a really extended prayer time with God. And now I live here, and I get to, it's like 1,000 feet away from my driveway is the entrance. And so I get to just to spend time with God. in this really beautiful place. And I like to run. When I run, I don't know if it's prayer, but it's definitely meditating, listening to God, talking to God, like panting because I'm out of breath. But it's a time where I feel like I get a lot of inspiration and perspiration when I'm running, and it's been a good thing. But definitely that's the way that I feel like I connect with God.
Thank you.
Great. Joe, the question that I have for you is, what advice do you have for people considering the full-time ministry?
That's a good question. I think there's a misconception that there aren't very many ministry jobs available. And that's just not the truth. Whenever a church needs a minister, it's really hard to find somebody. And so I think one thing is just to know that if that's something that you desire, there's probably a spot. There's probably someone who's looking for you if you're looking to go into the ministry. And then I think just being creative, like one of the things we've done. So we have a church of 125. It's not a very big church. It's a young church, so we don't have like a very wealthy church. It's a lot of people who are just starting their careers, not people who are, well established in their careers. But we've been able to hire a lot of staff, and some of it we've done creatively. Like we needed an elder type person or couple, which we didn't really have, and so we were going to try to hire an older ministry couple, but they're really expensive. And so instead, we asked Stephen Kelly Sandin, who led the Detroit church for a while. He's a hero of mine for sure in the ministry. We asked them if they would come one weekend a month this year. And so instead of paying them like whatever it costs, we would give them just enough for that weekend. And then they could keep leading their church, but they would come for a weekend here. And so and then in between, they would do, counseling over the phone. They'd help train some of our leaders to be able to do more marriage counseling and things like that. And COVID kind of messed it up, but actually they came a few times before COVID. And so we were able to, really establish this relationship. The church super respects them. And so it's been really awesome. It's like we got to have elders or elder type leaders for way less, and then that enabled us to hire campus ministers. And so even though Michigan State just shut down school, we're going to figure out where the students are and try to figure out what it looks like to do campus ministry in the age of COVID-19, as you said, Otoma. So I would encourage even ministers, people who want to go in the ministry, to try to be bivocational, to think about can you work part-time, serve part-time. That might take the person being creative with a pitch to their ministry leader. Hey, is there a way I can be non-paid staff for a little while? Is there a way I can get paid a little bit and do this other thing? And I think that our movement has always really valued full-time ministry and staff, which I think is excellent. And so hopefully we can continue to do that.
Man, thank you. Great. I have another one more question, and not the least. It is, what are some of your favorite books, and what book can you recommend for church growth?
Yeah, that's a good question. I love to read. So my favorite genre of Christian writing is not actually directly attached to church growth. I've read a ton of church growth books, discipling books, all that stuff, but I love spiritual formation as a genre. And so that's like Eugene Peterson, he did the Message translation, which I like, but it's more of a paraphrase. But his books, I think, are way better than the Message translation. He's an amazing writer, and he wrote to church leaders. And so I love him, Dallas Willard, Henry Nouwen. These are all like spiritual formation writers in that genre. For theologians, I really like William Barclay. He's a Scottish theologian. So if you pretend to read with a Scottish accent, it makes it even more impactful. It's pretty awesome. I got a couple here that I've been influenced by lately. This is a great read, The Apostle. I think it's from 2012. It's by John Pollock, and it's fiction, but we're actually going to base. I like to plan out the whole year for the church in advance, and so next year we're gonna look at Jesus through the eyes of Paul, and I'm going to use the timeline of this apostle book to go through the different stages of Paul's life and the people that he interacted with, like Mark and Luke and Timothy. So I'm really excited about that. And then this has been a great book for discipleship and small groups. This is a spiritual formation book too, but Life Together in Christ. I don't know if you've seen that before. Ruth Haley Barton, she wrote Sacred Rhythms too. And that's really good. That's a whole book based on the road to Emmaus and Jesus walking with these disciples, and then kind of breaking that down. What does it look like to walk in discipleship today? If we use the very first thing Jesus did when he arose, he goes on this walk. If we use that as an example. So yeah, that's some of the books I've been enjoying.
Thank you.
I appreciate your time, Mr. Joel. It's always a pleasure. I think it's just so inspiring to see what the Lansing Church is doing. And I'm very excited again that you're able to meet Araujo, and Araujo is able to meet you. I did have a question. Where can people find out a little bit more about your ministry and also to purchase the books that you have written?
You can go lansingchurch.org is the church website. So it's somewhat well kept up. So there'll be some recent sermons on there. And then gowithgod.org has the new Bible study series. People can check that out. But it's not done yet, but I'm trying to make it very mobile friendly. And then you can, if you want to look at some of the books, this is embarrassing, but you can actually search Joel Nagel on Amazon, and you'll see the pamphlets. And then IPI Books has the ones that have been professionally published. So yeah, you can check all those things out if they'd be interested.
Well, again, thanks so much. I appreciate you taking time out of your day to join our little YouTube channel. For those of you that enjoyed this episode, please click like and consider subscribing and sharing this with your friends. Thanks so much for your time.